Last night was pretty dope, brother.
Did you have a good time?
You keep good company, my friend.
I'm very appreciative of that.
Yeah.
We've got, oh, thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
I know we've got you for a half hour.
Sure.
So I wanted to really take this time to talk about, well, first of all, as always, so for those of you who don't know Shingy's title, it is Digital Profit or just Profit now?
Yeah, I'll take digital still. I'm working on the sandals.
Yeah,
in the stance I'm quite a way away from, apparently.
Yeah, the sandals are definitely getting you closer to the profiteurial.
Thanks for putting your shirt back on, brother. I was going to get real distracted otherwise, you know what I'm saying? Thank you.
Fill in, guys. So what I was going to ask is, well, why don't you tell where you're at, what do you do?
Yeah, sure. So, hey, guys, I'm Shingy. I'm with Oath. We happen to be, oh, God. Yay! One of the largest media companies on the planet. You've heard of the brands that we represent, but what I do is look at sort of agnostically what behaviors are looking like and what trends are and distill them down, hopefully, in a way that brands can get some context out of it. So that's why I'm here, is to harass people. Make sense?
Digital harasser.
Yeah. Digital prostitute.
Let me ask. So, whoa. And I'm just in the market for you. Every year you do the same thing. You come here and you tell the world what you've seen here that is important, that's going to have a perspective for how it's going to change their life or creativity over the next year. And I know you share this on your own videos, and I don't want to take any steam away from that, but can you give us a peek?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and it's an interesting question because everybody thinks trends are going to happen real quick, and every year the calendar rolls around, they think it's going to be new again. But what's interesting is...
Isn't this the year of mobile?
Ironically, I think mobile is the least entered category this year.
Is it?
Yeah, and I think the most entered category is outdoor, which, at the end of the day, the medium is the message, which is a Marshall McLuhan quote. And the thing I like about that is it sort of allows us to pause and sort of take stock. The difference between this year than any other year, which, by the way, we talk about in the industry, but I don't think consumers really care about, is kind of the data transparency scare. And so if you think about GDPR, which I know is a really kind of interestingly boring topic, but I think a good one, the challenge with all of that is it was coming anyway, but there is no unifying layer that says when I log in as Shingy, I'm able to see all of where my content is being used across the internet, and therefore I can choose where it is. There's none of that unification. You have to self-select where you go. Now, given that's the case, no brands are sort of saying, I'm going to do an audit of where I spend my money with these audiences. And so, although there's this sort of data discussion happening about where it all went and what happened with privacy, people aren't necessarily backing off their spend. And where I find that to be interesting is that if they are, they say, hey, the landscape looks messy, guess where the money's going?
The culprits.
TV.
Yeah.
It feels like we've gone back 10 years.
Yeah, we have, yeah.
And so it's remarkable, man. So what you and I have been doing and championing for quite some time is the power of this. You mean the average iPhone user unlocks their phone 80 times a day? That's powerful. But if we find that landscape to be really confusing and money goes back to telly, I guess it means we're employed for a bit longer, so it's not such a bad thing. But it's a little challenging to say that, it feels like we've regressed. The progression, I think, is happening here. So particularly for me in Cannes, has anybody gone to see the work? Anybody? Anybody actually gone to the Palais? You guys have all been handcuffed to PMI?
No, these are new audience members.
So here's what's, my piece of advice.
But when you ask that question, you've spoken, I'm sure, a number of times this week.
I have.
When you asked that question, what was the response rate?
Just like that. It's kind of like, yeah, really? There's work?
Yeah, what?
What?
Palais.
Why?
Is that where Vice Party is?
Hey! No, it's... So look, the reality
Do I need a
is,
stamp? No,
the reality is, if you get to see the work in the context the way it is, it's way better than sort of trying to thumb through on this thing. Yeah. So I encourage you to go check it out if you can. If you don't, check out one category, please God. I applaud you to check out one category, and that's craft. So the big issue that I find is that if you're going to try and cut through the noise as a brand, a point of view matters. Meaning, by the way, look, we're PMI. Look, this is one of the most beautiful stages here. It's dope, man. I don't know quite where we are, but it's fabulous. You sure this shit wasn't 3D printed too? It's pretty amazing in here, architecturally. But what I'm saying is that this gives you a sentient. And sentient is something that's very, very important. If you spend all of your world in the ethereal and the ephemeral, the challenge is that by the time somebody's falling in love with you and they go to consume your product and it's naff, well, then you're not going to have empathy for it. But if you can make the visceralness of your product as interesting as what you're doing in your digital experience, then there's an equality there that makes me feel like I'm going to dig it. And so both of them matter. So craft matters. And craft for me is point of view. So if you can create a distinct point of view that says, hey, my brand is this iconic that I can do this and I can see that it is without the tagline, then that becomes important to me. I won't be esoteric. I'm going to land the plane. The best piece of work I think that's here right now is the bloody McDonald's digital, not even digital, billboard. All it gives you is a little partial piece of the gold logo, and it says next right. So it's a yellow logo on a red background, because if I have you close your eyes or draw the McDonald's logo, you could probably do a pretty good job of it. If you take a partial element of that, you put it on a billboard, and you say next right, you know it's McDonald's iconography. So the power of design is incredibly important. Why? Because design has been homogenized. We're in a pretty homogenized environment here. This is adopting a lot of the design qualities that are current today, which I would say has been influenced by, say, the Nordics, who are influenced by the Japanese culture. The real problem I have, though, if you don't articulate your point of view, and we sit and we live in homogenized environments, it's like listening to rock and roll, you never invent punk. So we have to get out of that and create things that have a distinct point of view. Look at talk shows. Every single talk show looks the same. So if you're going to do a talk show, it better look different. It better have a point of view. And I think that cuts through noise, and that's another infamous sort of layer on top of brand, which we haven't seen yet. It's really unique. So craft, I'm really big on.
Wow, there was a lot of planes, and they all landed. I'm just trying to figure out which one I want to get on. Well,
now, hang on. Before you ask a question, let me talk about craft just a little bit more, so you can bridge.
Okay.
If you were to look at the Apple, piece of commentary, look what Spike Jonze did with the Apple Home. What's amazing about the HomePod is the product, whatever, but the way he executed on that piece of work. That story could have been told in CGI, but most of it's done by physically moving around the stages. That's craft. That's actually saying we're going to go back to a visceralness with this brand, which is going to be very different than doing everything the way everybody expects it to be today, which is all CGI.
Well, what I was going to say,
sorry.
But no, I think is experiences. So in a world where, so what you had last night was not, hey, everything is the same. We're going to put a known group on a stage. They're going to perform. The audiences are going to be close to them. And everybody's going to struggle to get through the door to go see Migos. And great, they got in. But did you guys have Migos this year?
No, we didn't.
Okay. But what was interesting about this, and I was, we were talking about I said Wyclef, dude. Because he's a performer and he puts on an experience that people will never forget. Now, we got lucky with Common swimming up and all those things, but you will never forget that. And the world is moving towards experiences in a world where you can get everything, you can do everything. And that's why things like the Museum of Ice Cream.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
People are going to pay, and so as I look at retail, and I've been thinking about, I'm so bullish right now. Like, I want to go out and buy a McDonald's. I want to buy a car dealership. I want to buy and create labs of retail, because I think that there's a future coming where that transformation, and the only way to do it is to put those things in the wild. And then even more than that is, as you step back, things like HQ. Like, HQ is mind-blowing to me. But when I started to think, it makes sense, because we've gone to a world where time shifting, I no longer have an experience that everybody has to have at the same time. And now HQ, and I remember when I was in Hong Kong, Coca-Cola did an ad where they played it the same channel, same time, same day. And you would watch it, and these coins would pop bottle caps, and you would catch these bottle caps, and you'd win prizes on your phone. People would run home to go watch a Coca-Cola ad. What? But there's this interesting thing around creating that experience that everybody's having or that is an experience you can't have someplace else. And so I feel like your kind of craft is in that space.
Oh, yeah, look, if you craft it right, it is the experience. But what you're talking about, and I'm glad you brought up retail, because what's fascinating, and by the way, the word of 2016 was clearly disruption. 17, I think it was people trying to figure out their brand experience. We're now moved into 18. I can't step left or right without bumping into bloody transformation. But if you step back and pause, experience is critical for a couple of reasons. Firstly, you talk about retail. Retail of the future is not where it's at now. It's going to move to a place where the energy of people consuming will move to. So I think if you have experience and physical design and bridge those together, you'll end up architecting something unique. Now, currently you've got, if you ask me what was the brand of the year in 2017, I would have said Supreme. And what Supreme have done, firstly, they ripped off Barbara Kruger, the 72-year-old artist, and repurposed her logo as their own. And so they've hacked that while hacking everyone else. So they did something with Louis Vuitton where they took all the iconography of Louis Vuitton, put it on a skateboard, and then got sued by Louis Vuitton for that. 6 years later, Louis Vuitton have them do collaborations because they've created a cult. Not culture, they've created culty. And what's amazing about that is then they want to repurpose their identity on other brands that make them uber cool. So it's about partnership of experience. In addition to partnership of experience, it's like making people feel like they're exclusive. The cool thing that you did last night with Wife is also super generous.
Well, and that's what I said, look, he's going to come and do a meet and greet. And that's important. Even tonight with St. Lucia, well, the same thing. But that's important. Nobody gets to touch these folks. Nobody gets to talk to them.
And so that's in a brand that sort of, I think, understands that in their ethos, who may have lost their marbles for a little while, was Nike. So Nike had this limited edition policy of shoes. It was only limited to the number that they could produce. And so that doesn't make it limited edition, dude. But what they've got is this incredible...
Limited edition. We can't produce anymore.
And what's incredible, about the limited edition, what they've done is they've created this app called Sneaker. And what's powerful about that is that when you land in a city like LA or New York, you have given them permission to be part of that brand. They will ping you and say, we've got a release of shoes coming. You can buy a ticket in line. So you buy your way in. And when you get there, there's not a line around the block for 2 days. You turn up and there's 100 freaks on that same shoe as you, and you're talking to the designer. It's exactly what you did last night for music. And that makes me feel far more exclusive than spending 2 days with a bunch of Supreme turds. And what I think is really interesting about that is that if you think about where the extension of collaboration goes, look what Adidas have done, man. Yeah, they've done some stuff with Stan and Pharrell, but they've also architected it all the way to the other extreme with Rick Owen. So they've taken an $80 shoe and now it's valued at $800 because it has a curator's touch on it. So if brands understand that in a world of 360 where you can touch everybody in a certain way, you can't go it alone. I think you have to ride on the shoulders of other giants that can help you, and experience is absolutely core of that.
Yeah, I think, so I want to come back to the word you mentioned, which is the word of 2018, digital transformation.
Ooh.
Oh, God, digital transformation. Now, look, I've been through a decade of digital transformation, and we're still trying to transform. And the funny thing is, I was on the digital transformation committee when I left my previous large engagement. And what I learned on that committee is I started to think about how do you really, and I realized nobody's done it. Why has nobody done it? And then I thought, wait, one person has done it. One person has done it. And I don't love to give a lot of credit all the time, but this person deserves, and twice they did it actually. So one, when Facebook first IPO'd, everybody said, and I don't know if you guys remember, Facebook is not a mobile company. They will not survive. And Zuckerberg said, you know what? You're right. Anybody who's working on a product, do not show me it unless it's on a mobile phone. And overnight, they literally became a mobile company. And then we give him crap because it's ruined the publishing channels, and I think there's other things. But look at what he did when he did fix the newsfeed. He said, my product is not good enough for my consumers. I'm going to take a loss. And I'm going to tell Wall Street, screw you. And he literally changed the product and made it better for his consumers. And it made me think that the conviction that's required is what's missing in most large organizations, and that's why they don't digitally transform. And I said, so when we were in this committee meeting, I said, why don't we do three things? If we want to be digital marketers, why don't we tell, as senior leaders, tell people we don't want to see anything unless it's Facebook audio off. The very first time we see it, by the way, what happens with stuff like that is overnight, the organization will have to do that. Or we care about data. Don't show me another business plan. Don't show me another business plan unless it has a data capture component on it. Or subscription. Like, what are the things that we didn't have enough conviction because we didn't believe that subscription was going to ever beat retail. We didn't really truly believe that data was ultimately going to be our currency moving forward. And so I think why digital transformation will fail and will continue to fail is because many of the leadership doesn't have the conviction. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I think that just to dovetail off that, the reason why there's
I might be wrong.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right, and there's an ish, because it doesn't happen with conviction because it's hard to manifest. So it seems very esoteric until you actually have it manifest into something tangible. And so, so let's think about the fourth industrial revolution, which we're part of right now. We had steam, we had electricity, we have computing. All of those things you can articulate to something, a switch on a wall, a steam train. There's a number of things that you can... computing, hello? But when we talk about the fourth industrial revolution as being intelligence, what the hell is that? It's far more ephemeral. And given that's the case, we have to see it evidence in ways that feel like it is already the revolution. And what it is an interconnected, transparent service. So the industry currently is it's less cool. It's far more practical. And the truth is, it's also transparent. So when that starts to articulate, I mean, I ran a panel on, what is the voice strategy? I'm like, voice strategy? Hang on. I don't even think people believe that voice is trustworthy.
It's trustworthy.
I don't believe it's trustworthy. I mean, who has a device, of the six of us who are here, who has a device, a Google Home, Apple HomePod or Alexa? And do you use it constantly? Right. Why? Right. So you're asking them for little tiny utility things. By the way, you can do that on your phone. And you can speak to your phone to do that. But where I find this to be intriguing is that is part of the revolution of intelligence. It's a tiny microcosm of many, 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 many things. And so the sum part of that means the revolution is going to happen. And I think that, when you think about experience, if you can take all of this thing that seems very kind of a lot of mass and make it equate to something tangible, then you could have the discipline to say, oh, that with a subscription layer will work. And maybe actually the ecosystem of the competitive space of Apple, Google, and Amazon, somebody might put subscription on that voice, and I'll have no ads. So this weather report is not brought to me by, because I paid for that. And that's an ecosystem that could potentially do that, as opposed to what we did with mobile, which take desktop ads and ram across the mobile experience. And we said, mobile ads don't work. So we have an opportunity to flatline what that revolution looks like. I would argue, though, with your comments about Zuckerberg, yeah, absolutely, brainiac. He should be swimming in on his yacht. But what I do think is amazing about that is that I would say he's bought his way into mobile, not necessarily built his way into mobile. Because really the power behind that organization is not necessarily Facebook. Facebook is a pretty conservative environment for brands to outsource their dialogue with consumers. It's WhatsApp. It's Instagram when it's closed. It's, those things are, they're acquired talent. They're acquired ethoses. And, I also, just on that whole challenge, I think in this whole landscape of a lot of noise, I think niche is the new mass. I don't think it's about these mass scales. I work for a company that happens to have it. But ultimately, where I have intimacy are closed networks, mate. You and I text all the time. That's an intimate closed network. No one else gets to see that. If you...
Well...
But you bastard. But what I do think is interesting is that, that's where the intimacy happens. Now, if you can take conversational and you can turn it into commerce, that's amazing value as an experience. But today, we still think in broadcast. We still think in amplification. We still think in popularity. Those KPIs are not going to work long-term, Holmes, because I think the network is closing itself down by default. And part of it is confidence, and part of it is these intelligent networks means that we can have intimacy and it doesn't have to feel like broadcast. Make sense?
Look, so the business that we're going after today is really conversational commerce, which is the majority of human attention happens inside of messaging, not even that device, inside of messaging itself.
Yeah.
Anyone who's messaging platforms.
I know you know that.
But yet there's no inventory that I can buy. There's no relationship that I can really build to date. I mean, look, I text with 25,000 people. And look, it's amazing the level of true relationship that builds. And so if you can harness that power as a brand, but you have to be super respectful of that relationship and what it is. So I believe that that's the next wave of what we're going to need to learn, because I don't think I've checked email once since I've been here. Like, what is email? Email is not a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but when it comes to this visual communication and it comes to this has already got a number of different metadata that we can use. You've got text, you've got audio recording, you've got video, you've got pictures. But when you go to the voice world, if it doesn't speak back to me in a vernacular that makes me feel like I can create empathy, it's not going to work. So, for example, if I'm a
I like voice, and I think there's going to be a market, but I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's another layer of conversational commerce for me, which is if I'm a 5-year-old girl speaking to a device and it speaks back to me with exactly the same voice as an 80-year-old man that speaks to it, it's not going to create the same sort of empathy. So I would imagine that with one of those 3 or 4 vendors, when those devices come out, somebody's going to have a Disney character you can represent as a 5-year-old girl. It's going to create a totally different type of empathy than what we see today when it's just one character.
I'm not impressed with the executions of voice to date.
Right.
But I also do think it is interesting. So there's a bunch of challenges, like the #1 search term. Like, so when I say, find me a restaurant,
yeah.
What's it going to do? Just read restaurant after restaurant after restaurant to me?
Please do.
So, yeah, exactly.
For 24 hours.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, that one. Go back to the second. What was the second one you said? So, like, I think those things need to be solved. But also, I also love challenges, which is, what does Oreo sound like?
Yeah, well, look, let's talk about sound. So brand sound, forget voice. Brand sound, I think, you've got visual cortex, right? The ability to take in information and send that to your brain, and I can visually close my eyes and see something, and that is memory recall. The second most powerful version of that is sound. So that's why I can listen to music back when I was a kid and go, oh my God, I know exactly what I was doing right then and there. It's, it sends a signal to my vaga, and I send endorphins, and suddenly I cry. So all of those things, that's very, very powerful. But brand sound has been forgotten about. If I play you 3 seconds of the ding, ding, ding of Intel, you're going to say, it's Intel. But what the hell is the brand sound of Oreo?
Well, to be fair, we did have, it's not, we tried that.
You're too early,
lost conviction. But what is, but what is that brand sound in, but yes, but Intel was the first.
It's just one of those channels of experience, man. So, if you come back to that anchor that you've landed on, which is experience, that's powerful. I think one of the, I'm impressed by the work here this year that isn't digital. I'm impressed by IKEA's P on a page. You see that thing?
What is it?
P on a page. So if you look at this, it's a print ad, bro. And it says, here is a crib that's like, let me assume it's $100. As a female, if you were to pee on this page and it turns red, it reveals a heavily discounted price if you are pregnant. Now, it sounds gross in some respects, but you know what? That's pretty damn innovative. Yeah. I don't know if you get to have to take that thing in, but you know what? I think, I don't know. It's like an updated...
here's my coupon.
Yeah. But what I think is amazing about that, that's pretty interesting work. And I think it's another way of saying, if people are going to be thumbing through my catalog, maybe I can actually get them engaged in this in a way that feels really interesting, that feels innovative. I don't know, but I'm kind of impressed by it. Lacoste. Probably a brand I couldn't, clearly I'm never going to be an ambassador for Lacoste. Polo shirt, yeah, get me one of those. But what I do think is amazing is that they took the crocodile and they replaced it with the endangered species, and they did the number of shirts of the number of species left. So what happened? Boom, sold out. Now that's powerful. Yeah. That's a powerful recognition of saying our brand is strong enough to say, we got to look after everyone else. We'll take the iconography of us and we want to make you super aware. The only dig I can give to that is that they had this beautiful, it really was a beautiful AR experience on the swing tag. But once you cut that off, you've forgotten the execution. It should have been the embroidery. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that those things that make you stop and think. And I think you said it, the association. We talked 2 years ago about design and that the absence of design and Quip, so... We talked specifically, you said, where's the designer toothpaste that I can put on my shelf and be proud to show it versus hiding it in my cabinet? And Quip is kind of trying to go there. 2 years later, they've taken your advice. But has design found its way?
Yeah, well, look, I definitely think design it's been democratized. So the baseline is everything should be beautiful. And everything should actually match the type of ethos that you're trying to represent. Because if you don't, you're going to see through it. You're going to see through it if the sentient of this brand didn't match the way I fell in love with it when I couldn't touch it, but I emotionally gave into it, then it's going to disconnect. So if you look at somebody like Quip, who's taken all of the design qualities that we expect, color, tactility, form factor, there are a number of things there that says, I'm actually proud to represent this, and I will have it on display. But it does take a while to experiment with that. But, I do think that people are proud to represent brands that feel like it's an extension of their own identity. But a lot of that, again, I would say that a lot of that has got to do with make sure it's not always homogenized. You know, so, you know, we're here with PMI and they've got this, you know, interesting packaging. But
have you seen the IQOS yet?
I have, but the thing that's going to probably stand out to me is not the white pack, but it's probably one that has a limited edition camo or something. So what I'm looking for, they have that, by the way. So what I'm looking for, and let's think about what that is, right? So this is a personalized product to me because it's an alternative product. Get it? But what I'm looking for is customized. I don't want to look like everyone else. That's why I'll never wear earpods. I will wear Bang & Olufsen's wireless headphones because I feel like I want to identify with the technology, but I want to be an individual that feels like I can customize and it reflects my personality than the populace.
It's funny because I was going to say earpods. And what's more interesting to me about the earpods are, first of all, I had a weird experience. So first, when I bought them, people were like, you're going to lose it, you're going to lose it, you're going to lose it. We know you bought it. I said, no, I'm not going to lose this. I'm not going to lose it. And then the other day, I'm in an Uber, and somebody left their earpods. And I was like, oh, earpod karma. If I give this back, whenever I lose mine, they will come back to me in this earth. And I gave them back, and the next day, I lost mine. They have not made it back to me. So it's not a real thing.
Yes,
but every time I think that, so now I just wear one to try to be cool a little bit. But then the cases all look the same. God forbid somebody else like puts their case down on your desk. You're like, It made me realize that there's just no individuality.
Unless you put a skin on it, better known as the bling of Croc, I guess.
But it's brand new.
It does look like you have snot running out of your ears, though, which is a kind of concern for me.
And people don't know if you're talking to them or not, those wireless ones. But so will design actually make it? I mean, what's the hindrance? Why have we still not seen?
Look, I'm a designer, so my background is hand kerning fonts and bromides and using squeaky markers and Pantone markers, which nobody knows about, but you can Google that shit later. But what's powerful about that is that's how we used to do stuff. We were based on craft. What happens is that technology says everyone's an artist. Really? As an artist, I'm offended by that, by the way, because they're not. You're running a goddamn filter over your work and suddenly you're an artist. So, for example, my Instagram is all black and white because at one point I'm like, I'm going to show everything. And I'm like, and now I'm going to show nothing. Then I'm like, hang on, what is this platform? Let me craft something different. I used to take photos in black and white. When I shoot and I'm going to publish something on Instagram, I shoot in black and white. I shoot like I used to shoot. So I put restriction and boundary around it. That's craft. And from my perspective, the reason why design is ubiquitous, but tasteful design hasn't taken off, because everybody says that they can do everything until they realize they can't, and that's why people come in and add a layer of expertise on top of it. Otherwise, if you go out and look at, just Google crowdsourced car design, you won't believe how ugly these things look, bro. And, the concept is you really do need people that have aesthetics that reflect the brand well, and that's why you have brand ambassadors. That's why you have true brand influencers as opposed to celebrities around brand. And part of that is a reflection of design, I think. So it hasn't taken off because we're still trying to determine what the quality of design really does mean.
All right, I'm going to open it up in a minute, but I want to end with a couple of personal questions. So what was the biggest challenge you had last year? Personal. Well, not personal, but I mean professional. But
the biggest challenge that I have had professionally is to let people understand or help people understand why Oath, as a value-based organization who I work with, the combination of Yahoo and AOL, and what the value of that really at the end of the day for consumers. And that's great because that's a great conversation for me to have. So that's one of
What is the value?
Well, it's really about having sites that people go to in categories that they care about. So sports, news, finance, fantasy football. I'm not a football fan, but those people who use the fantasy app by Yahoo are freaks for it. And I like that because it actually really does create fanatics in a category where it's not about mass, it's about attention and all those things that I care about. So that's been a Tumblr, safe place for people like Taylor Swift to actually hang out in. So it's just not a category that's disregarded. It's a powerful, growing mobile category. So those sort of things are really interesting.
What will be the future of Tumblr? I mean, where do you see?
I think it's a great platform for expression, which you could throw into the ubiquity bucket of Giphy, of Pinterest, of Medium. And Reddit, it sort of takes a lot of those best qualities and gives you an anchored URL to actually hang from. So I really do think it's kind of like the business card of the web for your own expression of a younger generation. And brands can participate in that if they want to. So it still is for very, very much the consumer. Personally, the biggest challenge I've had in the last year is trying to figure out my time shift, given that I have a 16-month-old daughter and I'm trying to make her as screenless as possible. And because I really think that there needs to be a time and place for that, and I will introduce it to it when I think it's appropriate or I have to.
When do you think that'll be?
That'll be
screenless.
when, no, I think that'll be when she has play dates and she comes back and says, "I saw this big thing. I don't know what it is," and then I'll have to show her something that moves, I guess.
So
her first gift was a ukulele, and her first guitar was signed by Slash. So I believe that kids are smart enough to have things that are, they all don't have to be sort of Tonka trucks and Lego blocks. I think I think kids are born geniuses, so I'm trying to give her things that can help her engineering quickly, I think. I'm probably the worst parent on the planet, but that's my ethos today, because
But how many countries has she been to?
25.
And that's your wife?
My wife has been to more, but she's, yeah.
I mean, that's your wife taking...
She takes my wife to most of those, yeah.
And so...
Some of those with me.
When you go to those countries, do you help her have a cultural experience too?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my daughter started walking in Tokyo. She was using chopsticks there. I mean, kids, they're broad. I'm not really a kid person, so we can move on from that conversation. But trying to grapple with that whole relationship to my own sort of toxic, anxiety-filled experience with this, because I was born in analog. I like to sort of revert back to that with this generation to understand that tactility matters.
Do you think analog matters to like Gen Z?
Yeah, of course. I mean, in 1983, Sony Records closed down their manufacturing plant of LPs, the last one, in Japan. They just reopened it a month ago. And if you look at iTunes' release catalog, its back catalog outsold the new catalog release last year. So absolutely, man. And not only that, they know more than... I grew up looking at liner notes. And then, maybe I'd buy a magazine if I was a fan. But at the end of the day, these kids have so much more deep knowledge around artists because they have all these devices that they can. So they go deep. It's not a mile wide. It's a mile wide till they anchor, and then they go super deep on those subjects. And I think, I think Amazon's having a great laugh at this because of it, right? They're the guys who came in and said, we're going to do fulfillment and convenience around distributing books, and put all these book companies out of business. And then what do they do later? They come back and they put up a bloody bookshop. I mean, it comes full circle, bro.
What will Amazon kill industries?
No, I do. Yeah, well, look, they're definitely killing some channels of industry while they're supporting others. Small businesses that would never have been seen nor have the ability to have a capability to massive growth probably give credit to Amazon. Prior to that, it could have been eBay. Prior to that, it could have been Etsy. But I think eBay is actually quite powerful. Amazon's quite powerful at doing that. Some of those categories that have challenged should have been challenged. So someone was going to do it. It just happened to be Amazon. But I do think that brands that think about instead of trying to compete with them, how do they complement that and make their brand even more visceral? And that comes back down to the retail experience. Now, in America, a lot of the malls are closing down, but you go to places like Asia, malls are the pants. People are all over those things. And that's because they really want people to experience the brand. And so what if they buy it somewhere else? They still understand the value of what experience means. So I don't necessarily think it needs to be seen as a massive competitor. It needs to be a massive complementer. That's such a word.
Yeah, it is. Well, and I also think with them buying Whole Foods, it's interesting because I've been telling people retail is changing, retail is changing. They're like, no, it's not. Retail will never change. Mom loves to push a cart with two screaming kids, pulling cereal. They love that. That's why they go to the store, for that experience. I said, well, I think
give me a massive anxiety attack.
I think that's different. And then when Amazon buys it, everybody goes, oh my God, retail's changing. What do we do? You're like, well, you didn't see that coming. But somebody asked me the other day, they said, with the rise of Amazon, will it be a platform that other brands can use? They said, like, could Ford ever use Amazon? I said, you know what, that's a really interesting question. I don't know, they're not going to sell a car there, but could they sell an entry kit to understand their car? Or,
But if you look at the componentry of, Ford makes their money on the aftermarket parts and services, I mean, you can buy that stuff on Amazon today. I think that's a non-starter discussion. Yeah. I mean, totality for a brand, maybe, but it's already in the game. And by the way, why not lean into the power of what they do, which is convenience? The number one thing that they have as a KPI is convenience. So what could you do that is convenient to your brand where Amazon can do it better than you can do? That's where I think it's totally complementary and it should be seen as competitors. I think Amazon are great at sending out placebos. Do you think that drone delivery is actually something they're dead serious about? So everyone else is like, God damn, we got to do pizzas by drones.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they turn around and say, I'm going to put up a bookshop.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm going to do this frictionless.
We launched a pizza store.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they're placebos, man. Let's not get caught up in those. Let's get caught up in what the key to that is, the complementary of convenience.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions from the audience before we...
So the question we normally get is, I'm sorry, wait, what?
I'm sorry, wait, what?
Yeah, exactly.
Sarah from Machina. Thank you, great talk. You briefly touched on the voice identity of a brand.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you were about to pick a brand, any brand in the world, and you were to create their voice identity, which one would it be? And what would the voice identity be like?
I think the obvious ones is where can you create empathy for the audience that really do want to engage with it. And if it's children who speak to the device, look at young kids, they're speaking into that device more than they are actually swiping and pinching and pulling and searching. So, I would go to brands they already have that affinity to. So I think I already mentioned, I think if there aren't Disney characters inside those voice devices in the next 12 months, I'd be flabbergasted. I would be flabbergasted because if I can't speak to a Disney character, I think that's where the empathy already happens. So for me, it's where's their alignment. Now, in a brand that doesn't have that, I think sound around the brand is more important than the voice around the brand. And I think that uniqueness is there. And the reason why I would say against voice, so sound versus voice, is that voice natural language is really, really, really difficult. Natural language conversion is really difficult, particularly when you have slang and you have certain nuances. In Australia, if I was to say, if I just had red lobster in my conversation, it would be probably red as a lobster. I'm sunburnt. But here, or if I was in America, it would be Red Lobster, the restaurant. So there are a lot of really different nuances that make it very, very challenging when you're trying to think about voice identity versus sound identity.
I have a follow-up question because you picked children, which is a group that, like I said, it's easy to make an emotional connection with. But we're here in the PMI Science Lounge. They have their own identity. So if you were to create sound for this brand, what would it be?
I guess.
Maybe, wait, what?
Yeah, I don't know. But it definitely should be something that feels like an ethereal breath, I suspect. Don't know.
Right, cheers.
I'll leave that to Bonin.
Any other questions?
Good questions, though. Thank you.
Anybody else? You, sir. All right.
Thank you, B.
Advice, though? One
Yes.
just piece of advice from you for us. In terms
you're
of,
going to give me advice. I'm like, yes, please. Yes.
No.
Don't wear black. Be black.
Just it works. Both seem to be working pretty well. Just, as we think about where we want to go for the remainder of the year.
Honestly, hand on heart, for me, it's, if we are going to spend a lot of time in this device, make sure it's conscious and it's not unconscious, meaning that if you're going to try and spend less time on this to be more present and more consciously connected as opposed to disconnected. Because I think, I spend too much time on this looking at everyone else's life and I'm not outliving my own, and that is something that I'm trying to re-architect in my own life today.
How do you feel? Because Most Def at the show I heard the other night stopped performing whenever somebody took their phone out.
Amen.
Okay.
How amazing is that? I mean, you've got artists today that say, check your phone in on the way in. By the way, I don't want to see this concert turn up on YouTube with this rubbish. I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm going to throw up. Oh, and by the way, it's vertical in a landscape format. It is the brand experience. And dude, being 5'5", short Chinaman, it is challenging for me to watch a concert behind a 7-foot guy doing this with an iPad. You know what I'm saying, Holmes? That's nuts. So for me, it is absolutely, if you're going to create empathy, it is about those experiences. And if you can just be present, the experience is going to be so better. And those who are generous, those guys are going to record it in a way that when you do decide to articulate that to an audience that cares, the quality is going to be magical. It's not going to be so rubbish. And that's the pro part of the user experience. So, just be present.
All right. Thank you, sir.
See you guys.
As always, a pleasure. Huge round of applause for David Shing. Thank you so much, David.